All community banks, for that matter, is you're never a number.
Yeah.
You mean something to us, and it's very personal. So personal that you can call us on our cell phone at 11 o'clock and say, I have a problem. Or message us on Facebook,
Have you had that happen?
Oh, yes.
Really?
Yes.
11 o'clock at night.
I have a problem. Here's what we can do tonight. Here's who's going to call you in the morning, and here's my cell phone number if you have any issues. And every situation is that way. And we want every customer to feel that wow moment of I am safe and I'm taken care of.
So Emily, this is fun to be here with you in Memphis, Tennessee.
Yes.
We're, at the site of ICBA Connect, sort of covering it, right?
Exactly.
But really a fun time to get to connect after a really weird year. So funny to think I saw you a year ago in Orlando, but a lot has changed, right? It feels like that wasn't a year ago, like that
Yes.
was 5. Does it feel that way to you?
It absolutely does. It feels like it may have been 5 lifetimes ago because it's surreal. We were in person and we were not wearing a mask and we were just kind of learning all these things, and we're watching the news each morning before the conference. And a lot has changed since that time.
No kidding. We think about, this moment we kind of shared where we did a live stream just a month in, just after Brad had kind of appeared and was talking about PPP with the president, and we kind of did a little live stream connection there. But what was the awakening like when COVID kind of hit for you? What was the sort of realization?
I think the realization was probably, of course, when the mask mandates came down and we're all going into this new way of life. But when PPP started, and it's a Sunday night for us, and we're finally into the system, and everybody's rushing back to the bank, and we're there till like midnight that first night, trying to get as many things done as possible. And from that point on, that consistency never stopped. So I really think that one night sort of set the pace for what we did for the next 9 months of 2020.
Yeah, well, you rushed out there. Red Bay, Alabama, kept a lot of businesses going.
For sure.
In Red Bay. You have any sort of examples of businesses that you were like, this just wouldn't have happened, or some connections that you had with some of those businesses?
I think some of our smaller, contractors and people like that who just maybe don't have a full-time accountant, or maybe don't have somebody that was able to help them through the process, but they could just come to the bank and literally sit down with a checklist and say, just bring me this, this, and this, and you're going to be able to keep working. You're going to be able to keep your staff. If you've got an organized business and you're a little bit bigger and you've got people to help you do these things, that's one scenario, and it's still a difficult situation. But when you're kind of that sole proprietor where you're the accountant and you're the owner and you're the worker, and maybe just 1 or 2 employees, that's a whole different situation. And that's where the community bank really stepped in to be the accountant, the advisor, give them the good news of what was and wasn't going to happen. So.
But outside of the bank, you're integrated into Red Bay, Alabama. You are involved in so much of the financial literacy, but you've got a lot of other stuff going on. What's been the biggest shift for you in that over the last year?
I think that was probably the hardest for anybody who is in, the public relations, maybe part of your bank or something like that, or really involved in your community, your chamber of commerce, and sort of promoting where you're working and living. Nothing was happening.
Yeah.
And one side of that is a blessing in the fact that you have some rest and you can focus on some other things, but you lose a lot of connection to your community. You lose a lot of opportunity to put people together in rooms together to make good situations happen. So that was probably the strangest thing, because our event calendar went from, multiple things per week to nothing. So that's definitely a big adjustment. And I think it's an adjustment we're still having to make.
Yeah. So as you've sort of like had that time period of, things weren't happening in your community, a lot of your family's in the area, You know, we were talking just as we were preparing to be together here. You had some of the coldest days, some actual snow in Alabama.
Yes.
You know, this winter. So I mean, it feels almost apocalyptic in the types of things that you were going through in that time period.
It does, because, you know, and you just, everything goes back to connection, because you already sort of felt like you had lost connection with what you were used to and what you were comfortable with. And then days like our little Snowmageddon week where we had no power, we had no internet, you were really disconnected. And you feel almost isolated, and it's a very uncomfortable place to be sometimes when we're also used to being together, and now you're even more sort of severed in a way. But learning to adjust through that, I think, has just been key, and being agile and nimble enough to figure a way out. Searching for Wi-Fi somewhere, trying to, you know, post something for the bank or something like that is just, you know, a simple example of how we do a lot of things, just finding a way.
You know, you and Community Spirit Bank has really found a way in a lot of different ways, right? You've sort of adapted quickly. You were getting PPP loans in the day after that thing was launching. But you know, you've also assumed a promotion in the last year as well, right? So tell us about that.
Yeah, so that was a huge blessing in 2020 of all the other things, but just kind of taking a role I had been doing with project management and organizing. I call myself the chaos coordinator at the bank. Yeah. So anything that needs to be wrangled and put together and organized, and that's sort of where I think I find my comfort zone. So took on the new CAO role in November, and just sort of running with that, doing a lot of new things for the bank in 2021. We've got a lot of big projects in the works, even with things the way that they are. But I think the success for us in 2020 came back to just having a great team. And everybody literally pulled together to do whatever was needed, whatever the task was. You know, it doesn't have to be in your job description. And I think that was key for a lot of our people.
So tell us a little bit about, you know, your team and what that looks like.
Yeah, so we serve 2 states and kind of cover 2 main counties, Mississippi and Alabama, and we have 5, you know, branches in our network. So we're a staff of less than 50 employees running those 5 locations, and that is one from a staff of about 30 to one bank that has, you know, 1 employee at it sometimes. So a lot of different makeup, a lot of different demographic, mostly rural, but just have a team that's really dedicated to the communities that we're serving, and everybody kind of takes on that responsibility, no matter if they're working in Red Bay, Russellville, Belmont, Mississippi, wherever they are that they're serving as a CSB representative, that's where their feet are, and they're present in that space. So they do a really good job with that, and they're really dedicated to their customers. And I think that's just what sets us apart and continues to. All community banks, for that matter, is you're never a number. Yeah. You mean something to us, and it's very personal. So personal that you can call us on our cell phone at 11 o'clock and say, I have a problem. Or message us on Facebook, you know. Have
you had that happen?
Oh, yes.
Really? Yes. 11 o'clock at night.
I have a problem. Here's what we can do tonight. Here's who's going to call you in the morning, and here's my cell phone number if you have any issues. And every situation is that way. And we want every customer to feel that wow moment of I am safe and I'm taken care of.
Right. Oh, that's, you know, we talk a lot about the relationship that people have with their money and their community, right? Like when those things are close, it gives you this sort of confidence that you can go a lot faster, right?
Definitely.
And it feels like your community has been resilient because of what you're doing. And so I applaud you for that. It's also been a profitable year for a lot of banks. It's been a good, you know, solid year because of that sort of answer to the response, right?
Definitely.
You know, so much PPP going through, so much, you know, activity that your bank's been doing. But you're also handling a lot of the things of running the bank, as obviously Brad is taking a different role with ICBA this year, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of change and hand-holding for a lot of different projects. There's a constant stream of email. You better move fast and quickly or you're going to get lost in the thread. And we're kind of adjusting to that, to him having other, you know, priorities that have to be taken care of during this time, and who was sort of responsible, and everybody kind of has the mentality, I've got your back. You know, whatever it is, yes, that's usually your forte, but I've got your back if you need me. And I think that just says a lot for the team and how we've always sort of worked we always have each other's back. And, if you get stuck and maybe can't finish that, let me know and I'll come in and sort of, serve up and help you out. So
that's awesome. I mean, obviously it's a team sort of role, but, I think sometimes we underestimate the impacts of those leadership opportunities and what that means.
Absolutely, and I think we underestimate the example that's been set by us and for us, for those that came before, and the one we're setting now for the people beneath us, because when that moment comes that you need somebody, and all you have to do is pick up the phone or shoot a message with the forward that says, can you take care of this? They just say, I got it.
Yeah.
I got it.
We've talked before, Emily, about this sort of long-term thinking about the way you think about your community, and you have some sayings at Community Spirit. They're sort of entrenched in the bank, and
Yes.
we've had these conversations about how you're not thinking a year or 5 years down the road. Can you share a little bit about how you're thinking about that?
Yeah, absolutely. And my favorite one, and I know I say that all the time, is that we're planting the trees that we may never sit in the shade of. We're planting the trees for the 20 years from now. And that's something that management a long time ago, Mr. Bolton, our chairman, and has instilled into Brad. And he says that a lot, we're worried about today and we're taking care of today, but we're also worried about the future economic development of where we are. What's making Red Bay Russellville Belmont better? How can we invest in our students? How can we invest in our schools? How can we let people know what's going on, the good in our communities that they can be a part of? So it's just a constant goal, mission, keystone of our bank to share that good, share that mission, and let other people know how they can help.
Well, I think that perspective of thinking about trees in 20, 30, 40 years down the road,
right.
When we think of a year of just all of the discomforts and change, it kind of puts it into a different perspective, doesn't it? That's
it
just
really
sort of
does.
like one ring on that tree.
That's right. One ring that when we look back in the history books, we'll say, wow, we lived through that and this is how we survived it. And it can set a precedent for what we do when the next thing comes, and it could be 20, 30 years or never, but we know we're capable and we're stable and long-standing and can take care of it.
Well, now, Emily, I also want to ask you a little bit, because when we talk about community, you sort of mentioned a couple communities, a couple different states that you're really serving and impacting, but I also want to bring up a different community, and that is this sort of greater community of bankers across the country that you've connected with some really meaningful ways, one of which I've been a beneficiary of with the Social Bankers Group, in the way that you've sort of partnered up with some other bankers and really launched that. Can you talk a little bit about how that came about?
Yeah, I would love to. The Social Bankers is one of my favorite subjects, because in reality, it all comes back to what a few of us were years ago when not many banks were on social media. There were a handful of us, yourself included, when I came into the banking world, and a few others that we always connected on Twitter and in spaces like that, or at a conference, and we would DM each other questions and things. And finally, a couple of years ago, I call him the godfather of the social bankers, your friend and mine, Tim Martinson, had this idea. He's like, do you think we could start like a support group? So he and I.
Did you really call it a support group?
A support group.
Okay, well, it's totally valid.
Its initial name, I think, was like the support group, Social Bankers Support Group. So, and it started out just as a private DM group on Twitter.
Yeah.
And it was just a literal thread all day long. And as we added members and things sort of developed and became a little bit more formal, because we were growing so fast that we don't want someone in another market where you've got a competitor sitting in the group with us and things like that. So we finally became a formal group about a year or so later and operate on a different channel now, and it's been the benefit to all of us. Because maybe it's something we need to hire somebody and everything we have is so boring. I just need an idea. What have you done? And everybody can throw up a post. Hey, I did this 2 weeks ago, or whatever. Something as simple as a job posting, but getting that support, because most of us are marketing departments of one. Mm-hmm. We're social media and digital marketing departments of one. You're doing all of it. And there's no one in your bank to get advice from because no one knows what you're talking about. They just like the pretty numbers sometimes. So having the social bankers where we can go in, ask a question. There's no stupid question. It is definitely still a support group to help you in a lot of ways, and it just continues to grow. So it's very exciting.
Well, I think it's a wonderful impact. You think of community. It's just that is such a part of your community, and has been such a blessing to so many people. It's really fun to see the way that that's integrating and helping you serve your local community better.
Oh, for sure, most definitely, because you're learning. I've never thought to do, oh, I could teach this, financial literacy class virtually. Let's just do a Zoom with your students, and I'll come on screen and talk about, saving or whatever. Or do you have a PowerPoint to go with that? Something simple, but that takes a lot of time. But you have this resource in your team of social bankers who can sort of help volley up and hand you something to help you out.
That's awesome. Well, we talk a lot about leaving your mark, and you've done that in some amazing ways in your local community, in your nationwide banker friend community, and you've really done that with us too. Our whole team loves getting to connect with you, and so it's been fun to see your career really progress through jumping on some webinars early on to now really taking a serious leadership position at the bank.
Yeah, it's very exciting and very thankful for the team, because the social assurance team is like no other. They are a support group in themselves, and everyone who works with them knows it.
Well, thank you. Well, Emily, thanks for being remarkable in your communities and for serving so many people so well.
All right, thank you, Ben.
Thanks for being with us.
Appreciate it. Yes.